you're letting people that aren't educated and aren't scientists decide what they want to do with ecology and wildlife. Like, that's the worst idea ever.
And I'll tell people, if you've ever gone to a restaurant, a specific restaurant, in order to order a specific dish, you're a trophy hunter too. You went out in search of something and you really wanted that. You wanted that photo. If that's how you're conceiving of trophy, then you're doing it all the time yourself.
Yeah, that's me in the comments. Hashtag just here for the comments.
I think when it comes to excise taxes, I think they should be playing that same game. Like, you want to go out there and be, because there's no such thing as a non-consumptive user. There is no such thing. I can argue all day long about how skiers and snowboarders are way more consumptive users than any elk hunter on Earth. That's the consumptive use right there, as far as I'm concerned. You've just removed an entire winter range from a set of animals that desperately need that winter range to survive.
Welcome to Salt Lick Worldwide Podcast, your ultimate destination for hunting, fishing, conservation, and gear. From international hotspots to the backwoods of America, we bring you the real stories, raw opinions, and the conversations others won't have. Buckle up, the adventure starts now.
All right, strap in, folks. Today's episode is going to piss some people off, and, well, that's exactly the point. We're talking about hunting. We're talking about guns. We're talking about conservation, hypocrisy, and the uncomfortable truth that sometimes protecting wildlife means pulling a trigger. My guest today is Brant MacDuff, author of the Shotgun Conservationist, a guy who lives in Brooklyn, used to hate hunters, and now literally wrote the book on why environmentalists should love hunting. He's a taxidermist, he's a historian, he's a straight shooter in every sense of the word. And if you think you know what side you're on in this debate, you might want to listen a little longer. We're going to dig into exactly why anti-gun crowd might be killing conservation funding, why the REI crowd needs to start paying their share, and why ethical hunting isn't just some PR term. It might actually be the last hope for saving our wild places. So we don't offer fluff here. We don't play by the algorithm. This is Salt Lick Worldwide, and today we're asking the questions that make people sweat. So with that said, Brant, welcome to the Salt Lick Worldwide podcast.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for having me. I gotta tell you, I'm gonna be sweating no matter what, because I run pretty hot, and it is pretty steamy here in Brooklyn.
I bet.
I'm sure.
Do you have AC there?
No, I have AC in my bedroom, and that's it. So I crank it before bed, I take a freezing cold shower, and then I run from the bathroom to my bedroom.
The joys of living in New York.
Yep, me and the street noise outside and sweating my buns off.
Yeah, well, it's pretty hot here, but we've got AC in Florida. You can't live in Florida without AC.
Right.
It's 97 degrees outside.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, Brant, let's kick this off. So if you would, can you tell our audience who may not be familiar with you or your work, can you just give us a little bit of background about who you are and what you do, and tell us a little bit about the book?
Sure. So I grew up just obsessed with animals the same way lots of kids are obsessed with space or dinosaurs or animals or anything else like that they become really obsessed over. I just never grew out of it. I knew I wanted to do something relating to animals when I grew up. I didn't know what that was. I thought maybe I wanted to be a bear biologist or a shark biologist. Jaws is my favorite movie. We are celebrating its 50-year anniversary right now, and it got me into sharks. And so I was just always crazy about animals. But as I got older, it was more, well, instead of choosing one animal to study, how can I study just keeping them all around, just making sure all those animals that I love are around for the future? And I'm a big history nut. My grandmother owned a little antique store in Buffalo, New York, and I learned history through the objects in her shop that she would tell me about. It really got me interested in history. And so it was sort of a love of history and a love of animals that kind of got me to taxidermy. I also liked the idea that, well, I could have a woodcock and a bufflehead and a roe deer and a bobwhite. I could have all them in my apartment, but only if they were taxidermy mounts. I couldn't have that many live ones, especially living in an apartment. So taxidermy was kind of a perfect marriage of history and science and animals, and that you can't help but learn about the history of conservation through all that if you're interested in animals and you're interested in animals being around for the future. And so I started studying conservation, and it's really impossible to study conservation without studying hunting, especially in America. The two are intertwined, the history of conservation, not from a good place. It was like a lot of bad hunting that was legal at the time, but a lot of bad hunting that led to our earliest conservation laws that are still a part of our conservation ethic and programming today, which I think is really fascinating. But so I started studying that stuff, started studying hunting because I just could not believe how intertwined they were and wanted to know more about that. And then eventually I was like, I think I gotta just start hunting. And so that was maybe 8 years ago. Not all that long in the grand scheme of things. So relatively recently, but I've been studying it for like 16 years now. So that all just kind of smushed together over a period of time. And then the book came about when I actually had the publishing house, my particular publishing house that is under Hachette Publishing. They specialize in nature-related books, and I had someone from the publishing house found out about my work and messaged me, had I ever thought about writing a book? And I was like, of course I have. So that, lucky for me, that was as difficult as it was because I'm way too lazy to like reach out to publishing houses and be like, can I write a book for you? Which is what I love about Sue Tidwell. I know you've talked to her, but she just wrote her own damn book and was like, I'm just going to write my own book and publish. So, but I'm not as tough as she is. I needed someone to babysit me through it.
That's perfect. Yeah, and it is odd, when, like I said, when I found out about you, I started doing the background research, and you're really new to the hunting side of things too, from a perspective that most of us started as kids, right? And I was born in upstate New York, just outside of Syracuse, and that's where my hunting career started as a very young kid. I think I was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, maybe even younger than that, when my father, and he had 6 brothers, and they would take us hunting, and it's a passion and a religion there. I mean, that's just, everybody looks forward to that time of the year to get in the deer woods, and so we were raised with it, but it's really unique to find people that found it later in life and that it kind of made that transition over. And I think they bring a lot more to the table. It's almost an indoctrination to us, but to see people that found it later in life have a different understanding and different insight than we normally bring to the table.
Absolutely. And it's both a blessing and a curse. Like, it's a shame that the people have been doing this their entire lives are not taken as seriously within the same space. So now I see that as a big problem, but at the same time, if that's something that I can use as a tool and say, I didn't grow up in a hunting family. In fact, I grew up very against hunting in my own mind as a kid, because I had nothing to show me the other side of it. So coming to it on your own, I do think there is a certain power in that. Having taken a really long road to get there on my own, I do appreciate that, and I do use that as a tool when I talk to people who are skeptical or just new or curious. It is a helpful thing to be able to say if you're not as good at communicating the why you still do it. So like, okay, you grew up with it. Fine, you grew up with it. A lot of people grow up with stuff that they distance themselves from later as they become adults. But why is it people continue to hunt? Why is it valuable now? Why would someone like me start doing it? So those being able to ask those questions brings a lot of value, I think, and they've been valuable for me when I talk to people.
Yeah, 100%. So what was for you, what was the straw that broke the camel's back in making the transition from the anti-hunter or non-hunter to the hunter, and which eventually led to you writing the book?
So I was never really, and I feel like when we say anti-hunter, we're talking about people who are like very active in the scene and making waves and being a part of writing ballot initiatives and stuff like that. That was never me. I was just like a little kid who really loved animals and could not fathom in a million years why someone would want to go choose to hunt them. So that was sort of the extent of my anti-hunting activity. But as I got older, I still had trouble squaring it, not liking it, not understanding it. But I definitely knew that I ate a lot of meat. Meat's a big part of my diet, and at some point, I tried. Well, in the book, I talk about being a vegetarian, which didn't really last. It lasted like after lunch and then before dinner. Like that's about the time that it took me to be like, yeah, I don't think this is for me. So it was difficult for me to square the eating of meat, but not liking hunting, and I couldn't really figure that out. And then as you get older, you kind of you go to the grocery store and you see the different types of meat, like not just cuts, but how they are presented. Like this is grass-fed. This has no labels whatsoever. This is pasture-raised eggs. These are cage-free eggs. And there's so much understanding on the part of the consumer that the consumer needs to understand if they really do give a crap about what they are buying into when they buy meat, eggs, dairy, stuff like that. So I got really into, okay, well, if I'm going to keep eating meat, at the very least, I want to eat the best meat. What does that mean? And so then that started me down this first big rabbit hole of where was I getting my meat from? And eventually that led me through the sort of staircase of happy labels to being like, okay, well, how much can I be responsible for it myself? And that's what led me to start working at a butcher shop. So I worked at a butcher shop for a while, and that felt good because I was like, okay, these are like half pigs coming off the truck, and I have to disassemble them and turn them into these cuts of meat, and that's what people see. But I got to see the whole chicken. I got to see an entire primal of beef. I got to see a half pig. Was that going to change the way I related to the meat that I was bringing home and was on my plate? And it didn't really. Like, I felt much better about it. But I felt like I was still missing something. And then this is all at the same time that I'm still working on conservation history and the idea of when we think of licenses and tag fees, all that stuff is it's just so a part of our seasonal life that we don't even hear it anymore. We don't even see it anymore. It's like, you've gone nose blind to the smell or something. Other people have no idea. They have no idea that there are separate tags for stuff. They have no idea what licenses really mean. I had a friend who just thought you just got a hunting license, and that was basically good nationwide for anything, anywhere, at any time.
Like in perpetuity, just whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah. And you can't even really blame them, because where else would they come across this information? Like, where would they be stumbling upon, like, oh, well, license fees and tag dollars? Like, you don't bump into that in your everyday life. So it took a lot of conscious work and study on my part to learn about that. And then finally it was like, okay, well, if I am paying for food no matter what, who do I want to pay for my food? And so I talk a lot about bison. I tell people if you're not interested in hunting, you can still go buy bison, and that's really great because it puts more bison on the landscape, and they work the soil just like they would normally without us, and that's good for the soil and healthy for creating ecosystems. So I was buying a lot of bison whenever I could, but I was still like, okay, I'm still kind of paying a rancher to ranch. I really liked the idea of spending license dollars, tag fees, equipment excise taxes, and those going to my state and federal wildlife conservation structure. I really loved that. And that's something I talk about a lot with curious new hunters who are interested in like accessing their own food, having food sovereignty, being connected to nature through what they're eating. And then they kind of get this added bonus that they didn't even know about, which is this economic bonus too. Like it's actually the money you spend that's also going into the system and paying these biologists and ecologists that we need. And that's really just an amazing bonus that I think most people just have no idea is going on. Did I drone on too much? I'll go for
No, man, that was perfect. You hit like 5 topics right back to back there. And And so for you, it wasn't necessarily a light switch. This is something that morphed over quite a while. I mean, you didn't wake up one morning and said, to hell with it, I'm going to be a hunter now. I'm going to go try this. There's some that's some legitimate thought right there that went into this. This was not an overnight thing. You kind of went the long way around.
It's like you wrote a book.
Yeah. Yeah, it took a long time. And, I also had, as a kid, I did always have this I always felt guilty about it because I didn't understand the whole history of it, but I did always have this sort of yearn for that sort of adventure outdoor lifestyle that did involve hunting and being in these either a dangerous situation or a situation where I really had to be such a part of nature that I could be on the same footing as a deer or elk or any other animal that's spent, just eons of evolution protecting and perfecting their existence as a prey species, meaning to evade predators, and to just sort of put myself back in nature to the extent that I could compete with them on that level and find out that was a part of me. That was always very enticing. I just didn't know why. And I didn't know that could be a good thing, that was a good thing. I didn't know how to reconcile that. And then you finally get there. And then the first hunt I ever went on, even though I wasn't even successful, just that first hunt, I felt it immediately. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, this is it. Thank God I spent this much time studying it. So in my head, I could understand all this stuff, but now actually being there, now I feel it here. And those were 2 separate things that came together in one moment for me. And it took a long time to get there.
Well, not to mention the health benefits that surround, wild game, venison, for example. Is there anything that's more healthy than, free ranging wild game?
Nutritionally, no, I don't think so.
Right. And that's the food itself and the way you have to get it. People they're not active the way they used to be. They're not outside as much as they should be. So just the physical and the mental effects of spending time in the field, that coupled with the actual nutritional value of the food, it's just win all day.
And it tastes good too.
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Going back to like the tags and the licenses and stuff like that, I don't think a lot of people understand that, like, no, I have to pay thousands of dollars to freeze in a tree with a gun or a bow in my hand, all right, or sweat to my socks walking through Florida swamp
for the privilege,
for maybe
right
shooting one deer.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that's the thing, we get hunters in general get labeled, poorly, that we're these bloodthirsty maniacs that we don't, we're literally out there just for blood, and we don't care about the animal, and we're putting trophies on the wall. You see these deer here, and we shoot them, we cut up their head, we let them lie. That's not what hunters do. That's a horrible analogy that we get labeled with that should never be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's in his book, Meat Eater, that Ranella is like, if you want to go torture and kill animals, there are way easier, cheaper ways to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing you mentioned too, and I want to go back to it because you did talk about tags, and that's something most people don't understand. And I think I'm guilty of this as well because I didn't learn it till much later in life. And I'm going to go back to the Pittman-Robertson Act. And most people don't even know that that's there. And that was enacted, is it 1937? I always get the date wrong.
You'd know more.
Is it 37?
I can't remember dates unless they're written down, but yeah.
Yeah, so, you've got Pittman Robertson, you've got, duck stamps, you've got hunting license, you've got these federal tags, on and on and on. Let's talk about that for a little bit because people don't understand, there's these things that have been in place now for almost 100 years, right? Closer to 100 years than 50, and they don't even see it. And that's been this great funder for, I don't know, I think in 2024, somebody's going to fact check me and comment below, but I think in 2024 alone, it was something like 1.2 billion that went in from these programs to help fund conservation. It was a big number, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the money is huge. And in one of my lectures, it's solely focused on the economics of hunting. And the money is such a massive component of it, and I try to tell people that that's a good thing, and how all that money breaks down, and also that all of these economic factors that are ultimately a benefit to habitat and wildlife, those were all created by hunters. The excise taxes, the duck stamp, that's how we fund our National Wildlife Refuge system. I tell people, if you've ever set foot on a National Wildlife Refuge, you thank a duck hunter. And anybody can buy them. In any lecture I give, I'm always trying to get people to buy duck stamps and talking about them. People don't even know they exist. Obviously hunters do, and then some birders do, but I just wish they had a little bit more publicity because they're the most just not controversial thing you could ever come up with. They're $25, 98 cents of every single one of those dollars goes directly to the government for the purpose of buying land, restoring land, all for the wetland habitats and animals, ducks that live there and need those habitats. It is a perfect and awesome system that you can, because the U.S. government doesn't have a brick and mortar store where you can go and say, oh, I really like this program. Let me give you some money specifically for that program because I really like it and support it. The closest thing we have is the United States Postal Service, where we are engaging in buying stamps, which are these little weird forms of government currency. And so just to create a stamp that is saying, I specifically want my money to go to this program. And it's just been gangbusters ever since. It's a really, really awesome program.
Yeah, and I haven't duck hunted the past 4 seasons, because I've been so busy. That time of year is really difficult for me, but I still buy a duck stamp every year, no matter what. And I've got a lifetime hunting license in Florida, and I buy hunting licenses in Georgia, Ohio, Kentucky, just on and on all these other states. But one thing, no matter what, all right, buy a duck stamp. No matter what, you're buying a duck stamp. Yep. And in Florida, we have to buy a turkey stamp. And then offshore fishing, kind of the same thing, too. Yep. We've got to buy snook stamps and different types of stamps. So, and I love those programs. I think they're great. And people bitch about them all the time, too. We're just spending this money. And no, it's money well spent. And that's what people don't understand. They don't see where it goes. And they think it's, it's just, we're paying that guy's salary to bust our balls every time we come into the boat ramp. No, that's a very small piece of where that money goes. And while, yes, some of it does fund organizations organizations like in Florida, Florida Wildlife Conservation, which is FWC here for us. A lot of it, it goes to these other programs, and that's why Florida's got a great. I mean, when you look at the public land that's available in Florida, we've got a ton of it. Comparatively speaking to some of the other states, not as much as out west, but we have a lot of public land that's available for people, and there you have to protect the land, and you have to be able to keep, the funding needs to be available to keep up with that. So we have to generate money somehow because, and we're going to get into this, but, I talk about the backpackers and the people that don't actually hunt and going out there and, we love the land and we want to see it. Well, but what are you doing for conservation? Where are you spending money that goes back into it? Now, admittedly, if they're spending money on, hunting and camping gear and stuff like that, yes, a portion of it does. But what are you actually doing to support these ecosystems for us to be able to invest dollars to support these and keep these things and to improve wetlands and keep wetlands and keep people out? I mean, that's a big deal that people just don't see every day and they don't understand it. Yep,
absolutely. And unfortunately, it's like I get, I've definitely I've had duck hunting parties stopped by NCONs, that's our environmental conservation officers up here. And, it's just part of it, especially when it comes to fishing, it's like, the boat ramp, it's like, well, there's a lot of people who aren't flushing their bilge correctly, and now we're bringing like invasive mussels and stuff all over the place, and different types of crabs and crap, and it's like, it's just part of it. You got to make sure, the system can just keep running, and sometimes you need a babysitter, sometimes you don't. It's usually the people who are, I feel like the people who are often acting in bad faith who do the most complaining about being checked on, whereas like, I've been checked on before and it's like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. Yeah, here's my, here's my license, here's what's up, fine by me.
Yeah, and conservation officers get a bad rap, I think. It's just this, for whatever reason, when people see them coming, it's like, oh, these guys are just going to be assholes right from the... And they're not. I mean, they're normally polite.
Yeah.
They normally just, hey, can I see your license, this or that, if you're pulling out of a boat ramp. We have the same kind of deal here, especially with freshwater in the state of Florida, in that we have lots of non-native vegetation. So same kind of thing. We've got to be very careful with it. And, these guys are just doing their job, and they're not looking for something. They're just trying to make sure everything's done right. And listen, give them the time of day, be polite with them, shake their hand, show them your license. If you got nothing to hide, you got nothing to hide. It'll be quick and easy. They're doing their job. But you're right. It's the guys that are doing something wrong. That's the guys that have, the bullhorn in the back, right? They're always the ones that are, I hate FWC, or I hate NCON, or I hate, ODNR for Ohio, or KDNR in Kentucky. Like, no, come on, guys. If you're doing shit the right way, what do you got to worry about?
We are on the same side. Those are, and most likely all those Fish and Wildlife officers are hunters.
Yeah. Well, I have my next door neighbors, an FWC officer, great guy, big hunter. I mean, we talk all the time, I'm the first one to smack him on his ass when he goes out and he shoots a turkey or does something good, and vice versa. He's back, and they're great. They're just people like we are. They're just doing a job. Yeah. And I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit, or you broached over it, in that I'm a firm believer that I think a lot of hunting now, especially from a hunter's perspective, we self-regulate the industry quite a bit more than we get credit for, too. Good hunters do a good job in making sure we're doing the right things.
Yes, absolutely. And that is huge. We really have to. I get a little perverse sense of joy every time I see some... there's like an article on Outdoor Life or Field and Stream about some poacher getting caught, and I'm like straight to the comments for what people are like, what they're saying about what should be done with this guy, and like they are just vicious because they're very conscious. Like, no, you do not poach. You play by the rules. There's a reason those rules are in place. Not to mention just the giving a bad name to all hunters, but just to people, this is so important to them. It is truly a part of their life, their lifestyle. And then to have these people act in bad faith, just how furious it makes people, kind of makes me feel good. Like, I'm glad you're so passionate about doing it the right way.
Yeah, that's me in the comments. # just here for the comments. No, and great points too. So we talked about this just briefly, but so in your opinion, should consumptive users like birders, hikers, should there be some kind of tax for those kind of people? Should they contribute more?
It would be really difficult to have, you're a hunter, you're going to be checking in animals, you can create a licensing system around that and you can follow it. It's really difficult to create like a hiking license and kind of follow that. I do think there's more opportunity for excise taxes in the outdoor industry. There can be a lot of fear around like, well, if we do like a backpacker's tax, does that give other outdoor enthusiasts the same sort of strong footing that hunters have when they talk about their contribution and their seat at the table? And I think there's truth to that for sure. But I think when it comes to excise taxes, I think they should be playing that same game. Like, you want to go out there and be, because there's no such thing as a non-consumptive user. There is no such thing. I can argue all day long about how skiers and snowboarders are way more consumptive users than any elk hunter on Earth. That's the consumptive use right there, as far as I'm concerned. You've just removed an entire winter range from a set of animals that desperately need that winter range to survive. So there's all kinds of like feedback there in terms of that type of recreation. Don't get me started on mountain biking, and what that does to a landscape, and now how busy it is, and how
erosion, runoff. Yeah.
What's that?
Erosion, runoff, problem. They're building these trails, and you're decimating the vegetation, and you think this little bitty trail is not going to do anything. However, you've changed the natural course of the way the water wants to run. The runoff's going to be screwy. Then you've got all this vegetation that's being washed out. It can't self-police. It's a problem. It is. People don't realize that.
The whole point of a hunter is to get in and out without being noticed. It's even beyond leave no trace. It's like, well, yeah, I'm not leaving anything, but like you're not, I don't want this landscape to change at all. I don't want there to be a ski run. I don't want there to be a bike trail or even a hiking trail. I want to be off. And that's the type of habitat that the animals prefer too. They don't want things getting in the way of their daily movement, and people mess with that a lot. So even if there's no one on that bike trail, the animals are going to avoid it anyway. And so then you've just reduced that habitat range by that much more and that much more and that much more. So, land use is one thing, but as far as excise taxes go, yeah, I would love to see that. It's the outdoor brands that really fight to keep that from happening, because outdoor goods are expensive, period. A cheap tent is still expensive.
For no reason, by the way. Yes. That's marketing, and that's economics 101. It's supply and demand, and once you've built that brand, you can set a price point. You can go to Walmart and buy the same shit, the same quality for a third of what you just paid at REI.
REI actually, years ago, REI has their own house brand, and their house brand is pretty decent. What happened was, when their house brand was still relatively young, they were like, judging these metrics from our sales, our house brand isn't doing really well. I don't understand it. It's a really good product, especially for the price. The price is incredible for what you're getting. And what they ultimately decided was to increase the price of the house brand. And that was all they did. They just increased the price, and then sales shot up. So people were merely equating the cost of the product with how good it was, and they thought, oh, here's a cheap house brand, it must be crap. So they wouldn't buy it. They increased the price. Oh, this must be pretty good. And people started buying it.
It's crazy how we can mind ourselves into stuff like that, isn't it?
People are so stupid.
Oh man. Yeah. So we got to keep this thing moving because I know already I can tell you we're going to go down some rabbit holes today, which is fantastic because I like talking to people that are passionate as us about it. You talked about non-consumptive use a little bit, and I'm just going to bring something up. Did you see the post that Sue Tidwell made this year or this week on I think it was the blue wildebeest migration in Kenya, where there was the video? Yeah, but there was hundreds and hundreds of people and they were blocking the migration routes of these animals. These animals are jumping off cliffs and doing stupid shit. I'm like, this is a perfect example.
Yes.
There's no such thing as non-consumptive use. And then once again, like I think a couple of weeks ago, she also posted something that was in Kruger National Park, something very similar to it, where you've got, all these game viewers out there, right? There's 40 or 50 around a pride of lions and they're mucking up the place and they're getting stuck and there's garbage. I'm like, that's a perfect example of why there's no such thing.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that post. It really kind of broke my heart. It's really sad to see because, on the one hand, you've got the tourists who really they just don't understand any of this. They think, oh, we're going to go on safari and we're going to see the animals and take pictures of them. And it's like, great. Yeah, I want people to go and be excited about seeing animals, but they just have no idea all that entails and how that is sort of breaking up the normal rhythms of the animals. And you would think that I really wonder what some of the people in those trucks were thinking. Like, is this normal? Is this what this looks like? Because you can clearly see animals having to divert where they're going and ending up taking paths that they wouldn't have normally. And so I really wonder what the people in those trucks were thinking. But yeah, I do side-by-side photos in my lectures where I show those just overcrowded photo safari trucks just everywhere. There's a fresh kill over here, and then all the trucks just they just mobilize and they go racing to it. And so I show these side by sides of that, and then there's just like one guy in the middle of nowhere with a hunting guide, and it's like, again, it's like that elk hunter in the mountains and the hundreds of skiers waiting to get on the lift, and just sort of that, like, these people want to be alone in untouched areas of the bush where the animals can behave normally. And unless you see those things next to each other, it's really hard for people to understand that. They just think of like, oh, photo safari. That's clearly better for the animals than hunting safari.
And what they don't realize is they're affecting and interrupting the normal migratory patterns of these animals now too. And I mean, that's a giant hiccup. These animals are very, what's a good word for it? It's cyclical in their nature, right? They do the same things over and over. They've stayed the same breeding grounds. They migrate every year, the same path.
Since forever.
Yeah.
Like,
but I don't blame it just on the guy with the camera, right? I mean, there's also a responsibility to whatever government agency or, whoever these outfitters are. And I don't mean hunting outfitters, but you've got game scouts and you've got, game drivers and all this, and they're putting these tourists in that position. Like, they should know better of all people, right? I don't give the tourists a bunch of crap for it. I mean, they probably, like you said, they don't really know what they're doing and they don't understand conservation, and they just want to get out there and they want to get some cool pictures, right? They don't understand what they're doing has an effect on these animals and this migration pattern.
Yeah, like as hunters, I always feel like we have to like validate like our hobby and lifestyle. But like, like someone would be like, oh, look at these 70 Land Rovers or Land Cruisers staring at a pride of lions. That's beautiful. And then like there's like one guy and a professional hunter and a tracker like by themselves on 100,000 acres. Like, oh yeah, that guy's a piece of shit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I think the current economic comparison is 77 photo tourists to equal the economic impact of one hunter, which allows that all to happen further afield and bring economic opportunity and value to wildlife further afield. And I mean, this is just stuff that people don't encounter unless they really sit down and listen to you. And that's the hardest part, is that we are always competing with those photographs that people see on social media or anywhere, of just like a grip and grin that to us we understand is not even the last point, but like kind of a middle point in a very long story. And people just see that, and that's the only thing they see. That's the only context they get. They have no idea what came before it, no idea what comes after it, no idea what results from it, because they have that one photograph. And we have very little that can compete with that. The competition is me being in a bar with a room full of people and talking to them for 45 minutes and explaining with a bunch of slides and metrics. But if you don't have that, it's nearly impossible to really compete with like photograph to photograph. There are good photographs of habitat use, land use, and how that's different, especially a land that is managed for hunting and a land that is managed for agriculture or mining or drilling or development. You can side by side those, but it's a harder story to tell.
Yeah, it is. And I have those conversations pretty regular. And I guess it leads me to this. So what's your opinion on this? So what do you think from a social media perspective, right? So obviously the grip and grin's a thing. And I always tell people, listen, that's a fleeting moment in the entirety of the hunt. The trigger squeeze and that picture, that's one very small percentage of what went into that hunt. And frankly, to hunters, most of us don't remember that. It's all the stuff that led up to it. It's all the stories we made in camp. It's all the, the trials and tribulations that we went through to get to that point. That's what we're going to remember. And the friendships made. The picture, while it's cool, I mean, that's not what it's about. But I think for me personally, I wonder, has social media done more harm than good towards this conversation of conservation from a hunting perspective? What do you think?
Well, what do you mean? That the grip and grin is good or bad for social media?
Yeah. So, growing up as a kid, right? So, like I said, upstate New York, and we're deer hunting. And I remember, occasionally, grandma would come out there with a Polaroid if we, if we were able to tag a buck, and there's a Polaroid and it sits in a family album somewhere. Nobody sees it but that immediate family member, somebody flipping through their book. Well, now instantly what we do is we take a picture and we want to share it with our friends and family. Well, there's a repercussion for doing that, right? And whether we see it or not, there is. And we're all guilty of it, right? We all do, because we want to share the experience with people and we love it and enjoy it, but people don't understand that. And now it's broadcast to a much larger audience than it used to be in the old days, where, like I said, we're taking a picture that sits in a photo album somewhere that only us and our close, very close friends and family are ever going to see.
Yep. Yeah, it's, I don't want to tell anyone that they can't or shouldn't take their photo or tell people they shouldn't be sharing their photos, but there is definitely a way to do it that is better than others. And I think there are a bunch of different ways to do it. The trick is, again, so much of it hinges on what's written underneath the post, and people don't care about what's written underneath the post. In terms of visuals, I think there's a lot of different ways to go in terms of, I really wish that, I think now Instagram lets you share like 20 photos or something. If it was unlimited, I would love to see series of hunting photos that are truly encompassing the entire experience, which is like waking up at 3 a.m. and getting like hiking in the dark and sitting somewhere for 4 hours and not seeing anything and freezing and like, oh, there's another squirrel. I thought it was a deer. Oh, there's another. And just like all of these photos, and then that grip and grin being in the middle, but then there's still being photos after this. Okay, then I had to drag it out of the woods. Then I had to skin it and portion it, and now I'm doing my own processing, and here's what that looks like. And then finally at the end, it's like, here are some freezer packs that I've made, and here's dinner. And just how many photos would that be? Or starting with that photo of dinner, because everyone's taking pictures of their food and everyone's proud of their cooking. And so you're starting with dinner, and then you go back, how many pictures back to, oh, well, here's my dinner. Here's me cutting up my dinner. Here's me getting my dinner. And so there are ways to tell that story, but it's like, you gotta people are just excited, and then they're like, "Yay, I was successful," and that's it. That's what they end up sharing. But if I could really get every hunter in America to do one of those things for a while and get that out there, I would love to see what would happen with that series of photos versus just a singular grip and grin.
And I agree. You know, that's one thing with our long form content. You know, we're editing the last 2 years worth of hunts, and what we really started to be cognizant of is that we need to show all of it. Show the preparation, show getting up early in the morning, you know, show the interaction with the guide or just you and the camp crew. And it's not just about the trigger squeeze. It's everything that comes after, whether it's processing the meat, you know, where it goes in Africa. You know, now we did it with you this year, right? We did the Catch, Clean, and Cook episode where we went through the entire process, and we got the skinners involved and the trackers involved. And, you know, we showed the process and bringing it in and prepping it over a course of like 3 days. And those are going to start being released soon. But I think it's important for people to see that, to understand. And that's the same in the States too, whether we're at deer camp in Kentucky, right? We handle it the same way. There's still all the preparation that goes into it. There's the hunt, you know, there's the recovery, there's the processing of it, there's the cooking, there's the packing, and frankly, for me, I'm butthurt right now because I lost 2 freezers, right?
Correct.
So I have no venison for the first time in like ever. So I'm one of those guys, with the exception of right now, because the freezers went out, I buy 0 beef unless it's an occasional ribeye, period. Everything that we eat in my house is 100% game, period. Now, yes, I'll go to a restaurant and do that, but at my house, it's game meat.
That's awesome.
And I think people need to understand, like, hey, I'm using 100% of this, or pretty close to it anyway.
Yeah, it's very it's very tough just to be like, hey, this is what, like, I didn't, like, you see a burger, but like it, you know, like I had to wake up at 3 a.m. You know, it's 31 degrees outside. On there, I'm dry, like I'm going in, you know, like I'm going in the 4-wheeler all the way to the deer stand, climbing up there, waiting until like 10 o'clock. Then I gotta put it, like, then I gotta do everything. I'm just like,
And you bought a tag.
yeah, like
Meanwhile,
this burger cost me $1,100.
Right. Yes, it's much cheaper to go to the grocery store than it is to go and hunt. Absolutely, 100%.
We have some curious new hunters that are like, oh, it's just like, oh, it's like free meat or something. And it's like, oh, no.
Like a whitetail backstrap, I think, is the most expensive meat on the face of the earth by the time especially if you're a farm owner, right? And you factored in, you know, the land preparation that goes into it, the land improvements, the feeding, the food plots, you know, you're trying to advance genetics, and for years and years and years, and you're investing in all this stuff. And then, okay, you finally get a deer on the ground, right? Go back and do the math. What did that deer just cost?
Oh, it's like when we go fishing for, you know, to like, oh, let's go catch a mahi for tacos. And we're just like, you know, catch one, clean them, you know, make the tacos. I'm just like, these tacos are like $400 a taco.
That's exactly right.
With all your equipment and the boat and the boat gas and just, it's just
like the gas and everything. And you're just like, yeah, this is this fish per pound it's $8,900. Like $89 a pound.
It's cheaper to go. It's cheaper to go to Ruth Chris and have a steak than it is to go get it on your own.
Oh, absolutely,
by far. And then one of the other things I'll bring up too, I think, because you were talking about photos. So I'm a big advocate now, and I think everybody's the same way on our team now. We don't show, when we do take photos, very seldom is there ever a firearm in the picture. And we do a really, really good job. Like, we'll spend an hour, if it takes that, to position the animal in a way that is authentic, but it doesn't look creepy, right? Because that's a bad thing. People have these weird things that they like to do. And we also never show any blood. Like, if it takes an hour to clean the animal off, that's what we do. If we're going to post a picture, that's what it's about. No guns, no blood. Do it as, you know, ethically as possible and as morally responsible as you possibly can, because, you know, and appreciate the animal. I think that's the other thing. If you're going to take a picture, it should be an appreciation of the animal and what it sacrificed for you as well.
Yes, that's the thing, is that it is like a show of like awe. That's what I talk a lot about when it comes to the grip and grin and how people memorialize this moment and this lifestyle. It kind of feeds into what I talk about taxidermy as well. And I'll tell people, if you've ever gone to a restaurant, a specific restaurant, in order to order a specific dish, you're a trophy hunter too. You went out in search of something and you really wanted that. You wanted that photo. If that's how you're conceiving of trophy, then you're doing it all the time yourself. Um, if you truly are really obsessed with these animals, if you truly value them in a way that brings reverence, I mean, that's what taxidermy is. How come I see 2 deer mounts in your office and I don't see a bunch of mounted chickens and and like cows and stuff? It's because
That's the first reel I'm cutting right there.
That's
for
funny.
sure. That one's gonna be great.
If I shot a stud rooster, I'd definitely get a text.
yeah, roosters are gorgeous. But there is that idea of reverence that you don't get with the average person and farm animals, because those animals are not revered. Those animals are seen as disposable. You don't remember the burger you ate in 2012, but you remember the deer behind you. You remember every moment of those deer. And so this is reverence. And you see that where do you see those farm animals being revered? At like barbecue restaurants? Because you've got like some Texas barbecue and they are obsessed with their cattle. And so you see those taxidermy longhorns because it's the whole reason the restaurant exists. They are obsessed with them. There is reverence. It's not disposable. This is reverence.
What's really funny that you mentioned that. Like I went to culinary school, like I know cooking and stuff, but going from like a trophy hunting standpoint and going back to like hunting, if anyone ever eats like authentic Japanese like A5 Wagyu beef, like they give you a picture of the cow that you are eating. And you're just like, wow, this cow is worth, whatever, $100 an ounce. I'm like, yeah, that's like trophy hunting. Like that's your animal. Like you're not holding it by the horns and taking a picture of it and posting it on Instagram, but like it is.
I'm eating Bob.
Yeah,
Here's Bob.
But you are taking a picture of like the 1-inch cube of it that you had at wherever steakhouse, and you're like, this is the most delicious thing of all time. That's like I've never made the comparison until now.
Because it took so long to make that cow, right? Like they have to be tended to every day. They get brushed, they get washed, they get fed really well. They're cared for. They're in a low stress environment. Like it takes a lot of time. It doesn't take much time to treat something like crap. You can do that pretty easily. To really take care of something takes an immense amount of energy.
I want to tell a story real quick if we have time. So if it's all right with you. So we hunt internationally a bunch, obviously. We took a group, and you were part of that group, to South Africa last year, I believe. You went.
I was there last year.
No, you didn't go. So I had a camera woman with me that it happened to be her birthday while we were in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. And as a surprise, her coup de grace animal was a giraffe. And I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding a giraffe in a hunt, but she really loved giraffe and she really wanted to hunt a giraffe. So for her birthday, we surprised her. All the guys pitched in and we were able to get her a giraffe hunt. And so we switched roles, and I was actually on the main A cam for that, and I filmed the whole thing. And the thing I took away from it is, and I never cut this video, so I've still got it, and I made just for whatever reason, I'm like, this is something I can't share with the public, but it's something that everybody there witnessed and saw. It was the most heartfelt thing I've ever seen. In that once the shot was done, both her and the PH went over. She was super teary-eyed. They They prayed together in front of the animal. I mean, this took a long time, right? And just the outpouring of emotion from her about what this animal did and it gave its life for. And I filmed the whole thing, right? And I'm standing off at a distance, but I've got the mics on, so they didn't know I was there. But I'm filming it, and I could hear everything in the headphones. And I made a conscious decision afterward that I'm not going to show it, right? I'm not going to cut it and put it out there because it was such a special moment. But people need to see that, right? And I kind of regret doing it, not posting it at the same time, because that's what people don't understand about hunters. And the other thing is too, they didn't see the crew of, 15 guys that came in to take care of that giraffe, and they didn't see the families that it fed and where the meat went and everything else. I'm like, yeah, I missed a golden opportunity. So you're right. I'm on the seesaw right now between, all right, should I post it because it's good for the industry and everybody else to see that, but it was a very personal moment at the same time that probably doesn't need to be shared. So it's one of those things. I talk about it a little bit, but I think you might have seen a clip.
I've seen it, yeah.
You've seen the clip of it, but I've never actually posted it for the public. And it was such a genuine experience. And listen, I was getting teary-eyed, right? So I'm going to call it 50 yards away, right, with the big camera, but I've got the wireless mic so I can hear everything that's going on. And I'm kind of getting teared up watching this thing. And I've never seen somebody appreciate an animal harvest as much as I did right then and there. It was really a beautiful thing to watch.
I think if we were to watch that video, we would understand what was happening. I still don't know that the general public would understand what's happening in that photo. They would in that video, that they would understand the emotional value and what is really going on there. But I would say that there would probably be a lot of value in those afterwards videos of that animal being portioned out and feeding communities. People they'll see the shot, but they don't. So many people think people don't eat the animals, that the meat just goes to waste, whether that's in Africa or America or anywhere. And so I think there's a great deal of value in telling that story, that it creates value for local communities, in that those animals are very valuable, but also valuable as a protein source. And if that keeps the industry there and really concerned about how is our wildlife population doing, are we keeping that population stable, healthy, rising even? Because that's the only way the industry continues. And then there are benefits to all of that trick. And that, again, people will, in my experience, hear all of that. It's just really difficult to find the time and place to show them all that. That's been the hardest thing for me to figure out. And I'm lucky that I have the opportunity to do these educational lectures where I am put in a room full of a bunch of people who have chosen to come to one of my lectures. And they will sit and they will listen and they will hear these stories and they will see these images, and they will come up to me and talk to me about, like, wow, you really changed my mind. I hear that from so many people. It's just like the opportunity to really have that conversation and present the full story. It's just tough to find those opportunities.
And I feel like, especially if they're coming to one of your lectures, they're already a little bit open-minded anyway. If they've already, yeah, because they've made a conscious decision to go there on their own accord without anybody pushing them for the most part. So they're a little bit, yeah, you're like you said, they're more receptive. But man, we went down. That was line item number 2 of like 20. That's the way that goes. Well, let's switch this over real quick. Let's talk about guns for a minute. You want to talk about guns?
I love them.
All right. So what's your take on this? So, obviously, we're both very much pro Second Amendment. And I think, as most hunters are, I don't think you can be a hunter and not be pro 2A. But what are what's your take? Do stricter gun laws, you think, risk collapsing that conservation funding model, some of which we talked about earlier, with the Pittman-Robertson Act, things like that, there's the potential for more harm than good. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so there's a huge amount of money that comes into PR because of sport shooters and sport shooting guns, not necessarily hunting guns, hunting ammunition, going hunting. sport shooters who I know, they fire off more rounds in one afternoon at the range than I fire off all year,
Or in 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So their PR contributions are blowing mine away in terms of ammo and probably just how many guns they own. You can't blanket anything, but like I feel like sport shooters tend to have a greater number. I have only I've got like maybe a couple guns that are very similar, but it's like, okay, well, I've got to have these different gauges of shotgun, and then I've got this sort of bigger bolt action and kind of a smaller bolt action. You got to have a 22 because that's just the best. So the money is really tricky there, especially when it comes to sort of playing the PR game and talking to people about guns and the connection between guns and hunting. There's also sort of this fear among gun owners that okay, any kind of gun regulation is just a slippery slope to losing everything, and it's just a mire of you are not going to please everyone. It's really funny to me when people are talking about Japan, Australia, the United Kingdom, they don't have guns. And it's like, oh, they have so many guns. They have so many guns. They're just not the guns that you are thinking of, because now, as just a regular person in America, now your association with the word gun is any horrific thing that has popped up in the news. And anything that does pop up in the news is going to be horrific. Lady goes pheasant hunting, brings home dinner, does not make the news. Her gun use is not interesting. So, of course, you're only hearing about the worst people, the bad actors that are popping up in the news. But because of that, there is a general understanding among people that, oh, gun, that means handgun, and that means like a military style assault rifle, and so that's what people's understanding of gun is today, which is a huge difference from what it used to be when people had target shooting as a part of a school athletic program. You know what I mean? Gun culture in America has definitely changed, and it is tricky to parse out when you're dealing with the amount of conservation funding that comes from that, comes from sport shooters, and then how people want to see gun regulations change or increase or what have you, and then the people who are making the gun regulations, they will set up something that affects a duck hunter with their duck hunting shotgun. And I think at the end of the day, what people are truly concerned about is was this a gun that was purposefully made to kill a bunch of people really quickly? And because of because of what happens with guns in the media, where they're seeing those gun stories, they don't understand that there is this entire other side of gun culture that they've never really experienced, that they don't really have any knowledge of, because it is connected to hunting. And again, if you don't hunt, you probably don't know anything about hunting except for whatever you've seen in the media. So it's just there's no way you're going to make everybody happy. But I think as long as people understand that people's fear are guns that have been made to kill a lot of people very quickly, that is their greatest fear. And so communicating with them about that, and I get a lot of that with our new hunter groups, people not really understanding the type of guns they're going to be shooting, and wanting to start with, we always start people with archery for a bunch of different reasons. But because of that, that is because there is this initial knee-jerk fear reaction to guns, period.
Yeah, and I think the media, mainstream media, has done nothing to help that either over the past couple of decades now, and it's unfortunate too. For the most part, I think gun owners. I'm going to say 99% of gun owners do everything the right way, and and they abide by the law. It only takes one bad apple to really set us back, and they don't talk about all the good that comes from that gun owners do and the programs they support. It's all the bad stuff, and that it could be one incident that happens a year, but everybody's going to hang their hat on that. Oh, we need new legislation, we need stricter gun laws, we need this, we need that. I'm a proponent of, I think we need more mental health programs. That's my thing. That's my take on the whole thing. I won't go down that rabbit hole because we'll be here forever, but that's my take on that. I think we could avoid a lot of this stuff if we could recognize, some of those signs earlier.
Yeah. Brent, when you're talking to new hunters, do you ever go into like the fact that the American model of conservation is so different than like the European model or the Australian model or the Japanese model of just like you guys like of just like there's no like being in like, in the UK and be like, I'm gonna go like hunt public lands today. You're like, no, that belongs to like the third child of whatever Duke from 1,000 years ago.
Yep. Yeah, that's a huge part of what I talk about. I talk about the North American model in almost every one of my lectures because people don't know about it. They don't know it exists. They don't know what it is. I've done lectures at universities in their environmental departments, and they've never heard of it. They don't know what it is. So I talk about the model a lot, and I do talk about just our public lands, our understanding of wildlife. Just because a deer is on your lawn, that deer doesn't belong to you. It's not open season on that deer just because it's on your property. And the idea that we just have public lands in the way and ways, different ways that we have public land in this country is unbelievable. I really drive it home that like, no matter what your feeling about America, American politics, like what's going on in America today, you should feel really psyched and proud that America has a conservation structure unlike any place on Earth. And it works really, really, really well. So that's a huge component to my lectures and when I'm talking about not just animals, but habitat, because so much of it, the animals, we like to focus on the animals because they're kind of the fun, cute, exciting part of that story.
Yeah.
But it's all meaningless without habitat. And I will, and I'll try to bring up cases from other countries, places in Europe and Australia and Japan, and as many cases as possible to sort of show the differences in management techniques in different countries and what happens when you make this choice over that choice, and sort of go down those consequences.
Well, we've got, all these friends we've made all over the world now, and they come to the US and we have them on the podcast or we take them hunting. They're like, this is the best thing ever. Like, you can just go hunting there. I'm like, yeah, like we can't, there's no, like South Africa, for example.
Yeah, I know.
That's not a thing. You can't do that there.
Everything's a farm.
Yeah. And then I explain to people, that come and hunt with us. Well, we've had several people come over from South Africa, and, I explain to them that, hey, these animals don't belong to me. They belong to the state. They belong to the federal government. They're like, they just can't wrap their head around that. Well, why do you spend so much time and so much energy fostering? Like, because it's my responsibility to do that. Like, if I want to grow this population or grow this deer herd, and I want to improve the land, and it's not just for deer, it's for all the wildlife out there when we're making these improvements, that's what you want to do. You want to be a steward of the land, and that's part of it. And they can't get their head wrapped around the fact that we don't own the animals, and the fact that we can just go on public land and hunt like it doesn't belong to anybody. Like, we don't have to pay somebody, right? Like, there's not a landowner there that we have to pay if we go harvest. They just can't wrap their head around it because it's so unique. Our model is so unique. And to me personally, looking at so many, ours is by far the best model that's out there. I mean, there's nothing even close to what we do.
It's incredible. There's an author I like, this guy Scott Galloway, and he says a lot, plant a tree the shade of which you will never sit under. And I see that a lot in when it comes to American models of conservation, of like, bringing back turkey or bringing back elk populations. When I think about like Virginia elk, Kentucky elk,
Kentucky.
Yeah.
those
Oh,
elk
you went there.
populations.
So I have a farm in Kentucky, and we talk about that all the time. We're fortunate in that. So I am, what are we, one county north of the elk zone in Kentucky?
Yeah.
And I actually get elk on my farm now. They will come through occasionally, and it's such a success story.
One day.
And the one people have a hard time with, and I'm sorry, I just totally interrupted you. You got me talking about elk now, so that's one of my things. But in the state of Kentucky, they do a really cool thing where there is, call it 2,000 tags they issue a year. It's not 2,000, that's just a random figure. But only 10% of the tags go to out-of-state residents, and a lot of out-of-state hunters bitch about it. I have no problem with that because the people funding those hunts are coming from in-state anyway, and they're around. So I think it's a great idea. Reward the people that are in the state, that are constantly there, and do it. And for me, I still put in, I'm not a resident of the state of Kentucky, though I own land there. I've never been drawn, but I'm going to continue to spend that $100 a year to put in for that elk draw, knowing that even if I don't get it, that money is going back in to preserve that species and increase their habitat. So for me, it's a win-win, and I love it. To think that I can see free-ranging elk on my farm in Kentucky blows my mind.
Yep.
Like, who else can do that?
100%. Yeah, that's exactly what I was just gonna say. Like, I pay into, I don't know, Virginia and a couple other states for their elk draw. I have no plans to win it. I think I have a sub 1% chance for the rest of my life to win it. But like, yeah, like the duck stamp, I really want to put my money where my mouth is and say, I support your program. I support this program. I support what's happening here. It's incredible that we are bringing these elk back to their range. They tried to bring elk back to New York, but it was like the auto insurance industry that bought them. And, like little old ladies who thought their their begonias were going to get eaten in their backyard and stuff like that. So I'm still pleading with Rocky Mountain Elk to come bring elk back to New York. But
yeah, and it's a great thing. And if you Ranella, he's a big proponent of it too, right? Yeah. So, and I love Steve, but that's the thing. If you go back to early Western expansion and going through the Kentucky territory, and you're hearing these stories like Daniel Boone and all these other guys, and you're looking at elk herds that were in the thousands. So at one point in time, there was more elk east of the Mississippi than there currently is west of the Mississippi right now. The elk herds were just out. There was elk, there was buffalo, there were all these other species of animal, and now they're gone. So if we, with some of these dollars, can do our due diligence and start bringing these animals back and reintroducing them to their native habitat, that's the other thing. They're native there. They belong there. They were there before we were. They used to migrate. If we can do that and we can save these species, and not only that, if we can bring them back so not only we as hunters, but our kids can enjoy it and our grandkids can enjoy it and have a chance, I'm all for it. And that's what I talk to a lot of people about too. Sorry, I get passionate about this, is that, especially with the elk draw, like I encourage all of my friends, most of us are here in Florida, but I've got, Virginia, and I do put in for the Virginia tag because Brian lives there too. Yeah. And, I do it every year, and I've got a couple of friends who are like, yeah, man, but we're never going to get drawn. Why do it? I'm like, no. This money, it's better than, like, I don't know where else you could donate it that's better. Maybe exception of a duck tag, but I mean, it's going right back into conserving the species and growing the population too. So I think it's like, I'm just super passionate about it. I think it's fantastic. And even if it's 1 in a million for me that I ever get to hunt a native Kentucky elk, I don't care. I'm going to do it every year just to know that, hey, this species was wiped out and they brought them back and now they're flourishing. And that's a perfect example of what conservation in the U.S. can do if done properly.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people misunderstand that about reintroductions. If they're thinking about wolf reintroductions in Colorado, it's like, well, you can't just start with the wolves. You can't just, scoop up a bucket of wolves and dump them in a place. Wolves are awesome. They're like I describe them as like if you had a glass jar and you put rocks in the glass jar and then you took some water and you poured it over the rocks, the water goes around where the rocks are. Like it'll figure out the spaces where it can go. And that's like wolves coming up and wolves coming down. They figure out the areas where they can go. And what does that have to do with? It has to do with landscape and food sources. So, like, hey, you want to see wolves back somewhere? Start bringing elk back somewhere, And so everyone wants to jump right to the wolves because they're.
There's some audio. Hang on.
There we go. You're back.
Okay, good. Sorry. So it's like, yeah, you kind of have to start with landscape and food sourcing. But it just kind of goes back to everyone just thinking like, wolves are cool. They just like predators more and they don't think about the elk. We're nerds, and so we're obsessed with the elk. But if you want to start this sort of, it's called ecology, you have to have a building block set for that, which is landscape for the animals, the predators that eat the animals, the spider ate the fly and the old lady. Like, you really have to build that up. And so that's another thing that I try to talk to people about is like, you want to talk reintroductions? Talk about the reintroductions of the other animals that the wolves need later. You can't start with the predators. They got to have something to eat.
Yeah, the apex predator, exactly. Yeah. Well, and I think that got a bad rap too, because there was this notion going around that somehow the wolves that they introduced were some kind of hybrid species that were from way up north in Canada, and genetically they were much larger than the. And then I watched, and I kind of bought into it a little bit before I got to do the research. But then, who was it? Rogan had a wolf biologist on, and she dispelled all that. She's like, no, genetically they're exactly the same as what's. What people don't understand, wolves migrate too, and they've been in that area and around there for years. So there was some BS that got thrown out there. Whoever did it, I don't know, but it was out there. That's been proved to be false. But also, people like to hang their hat on the cattle depredation thing too. That's a big thing, and I get it from a farmer's perspective, right? But I don't. Are these wolf packs so bad now that they're decimating entire populations of cattle, or is it one yearling here, one calf there kind of thing? And I think we've encroached on their land too, so there's got to be something that's said about that. Exactly. Unfortunately,
yeah,
we have.
That's what happens when you get these extremist views on each side. Is you lose sight of like, okay, let's take it back to the middle here and figure out what's real.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, and I don't want to throw shit at a farmer too. So I don't want to, I'm not going to get lit up in the comments over that too, because I just threw a farmer under the bus, but that is not what I intended to do. It was more of a question, and I support our farmers too and their operation, but I don't think it's as big a deal as they make it out to be. I think it gets over dramatized and it's just not. And I think, the wolf is one small, example, but you're right. You can't have an apex predator without something for it to eat.
It's more the optics that people will they will get more fired up over predators. And it really is because they're cuter and like cooler looking. I love wolves. I also love elk and white-tailed deer. I don't think a wolf is a better animal than a white-tailed deer. They are equals. They have place on the landscape, and I see it from a lot of people, the way they feel about, it's like the Cecil the Lion thing. People will freak out over a lion, but like not a Thompson's gazelle. And it's sort of this, and I see it with fish too. You keep going down that the way people relate to animals. And people don't have a problem with fishing, but they hate hunting. And it's like, why? Because you don't care about fish? Like, there's something weird about that to me. Like, I like the fish too. Like, but it's just the way.
That's a perfect analogy, by the way.
There's a weird hierarchy when it comes to animals, and like my people that I know that live in New York, and I'm just like, that are on the left and everything. And I'm just like, like animals should live and all this stuff. And I'm just like, how do you feel about rats? And they're like, kill them all. I'm like, but they're like, like they have a complex social structures. Like these are sentient animals. Like, no, I hate rats. Like they're terrible. I'm just like, I think, how come you feel differently about a deer?
I think also we've sensationalized a lot of this, and that you've got movies like Bambi, for example. Disney. It's a beautiful movie. It's great. However, over the course of hunting, how much damage has that done? Movies like that. And I'll go from an Africa perspective, like Lion King. How much damage has that done to the hunting community because of stuff? Because now people equate animals as being emotional entities that, they can wrap their arms around and they can go hug and they can play with. No, these are wild, mean animals. This is sensationalized. This isn't real world, people. These kids are growing up thinking that these are pets. They can just walk out there and pet Pomone and, whatever their name, Pumbaa and Simone or whatever their names are.
Good luck petting Pumbaa.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens.
Though what I like to say about like anthropomorphism is like, is anthropomorphism good or bad? Yes. Like the trick is there are things that you could say about lions that are true. Like they're highly social. They're highly, there are things you can equate that also people do. But then there's so many things that you can't. And so people will latch on to the things that are genuinely similar to people in any animal, not just lions. So they'll latch on to that and then conveniently ignore, like, the hamster eating its babies or whatever. They will.
That is
really
very true.
Pick and choose. So it's like that's the trouble is. I love having a greater understanding of different species and how they interact and their social structures. And we've learned so much about different animals from the people who do nothing but study them. My favorite thing is that specifically people who study baboons hate baboons.
I also hate baboons.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
But so it's tricky because that's, again, another thing where it's like, oh, well, if you say there's no truth to anthropomorphism and they're just this, like gorillas are just like monsters of the jungle or whatever, it's like, okay, well, that's not true. But then if you're also applying this sort of Disney filter to every animal, it's like, oh, well, a lot of times that would be a really screwed up Disney movie, the more you know about certain animals' behaviors. So again, it's like, I always find myself being a raging moderate, like, okay, we can't go too far to one side of the other. Let's bring it back to let's take a closer look at this. And, but yeah, that's the trouble with anthropomorphism is you think you might be speaking an animal's language, but it's like the country where you like learn the like okay symbol, but it really means like asshole or something like that. So you're not speaking a real language,
French.
You mean to tell me that if my parents were eaten by a leopard, I wouldn't be adopted by a gorilla family?
Is that what that person was having?
Well, and that's the difference, right, between emotional versus science in wildlife management, right? You have to take the emotion out of it and let science dictate what we do. It's like, you've got these people, and I think Colorado, Montana, they put all these initiatives out there, right? And it's it's male or ballot biology, right? Where, you're letting people that aren't educated and aren't scientists decide what they want to do with ecology and wildlife. Like, that's the worst fucking idea ever. These people are trained their whole life and they study these species and they know what the hell they're talking about. Let's not listen to them. Let's decide for ourselves what we're going to do.
Ballot box biology absolutely terrifies
me.
me.
Yes, that's it.
Ballot box biology. It is. So this is another thing I talk about in my lectures. And what I'll do is I'll show photos of like sort of like meme style photos of like chemistry and physics. And, it's just like numbers and stuff. And astrophysics, rocket ships and space and the stars and stuff like that. And it's like these are sciences, just like ecology, biology, environmental science, wildlife management science. Those are all real sciences. The difference is nobody is emotional about chemistry or physics. Albert Einstein comes out with E = mc². Like, Are you going to get upset about it? Like, prove him wrong. Do the number.
I didn't get emotional about it. I didn't lose sleep. Didn't lose sleep at night over it. I can tell you that.
Run the numbers. NASA doesn't lose a lot of sleep because there is an existence of flat earthers. It doesn't really affect how NASA does its job, but when it comes to wildlife science, it has to do with wildlife. That's animals. People are so emotional about animals, and they will completely lose sight of the fact that their emotions could be getting in the way of the science, or that the emotions and the science might be different. I try to reiterate to people that wildlife biologists, ecologists, wildlife management officers, they got into that work because they love animals. There's not a wildlife biologist on planet Earth who was like, my God, I hate woodcock. I can't wait to spend my entire life studying woodcock and old growth and new growth forests. What?
I'm going to stake my fortune on woodcock research in the upper Northwest.
I'm going to become a billionaire woodcock biologist.
Listen, you know how people remix those reels on TikTok and shit right now? That's exactly what's going to happen with that one right there. There's going to be woodcock memes out next week now. That was perfect. I love it. Oh, crap. Yeah, all right. So, sorry, I can't.
I'm just picturing some guy at a country club just being like, how did you get here? Like, oh, Grandpa. Grandpa wrote a paper on the ecology of woodcock research on there. And it's like, that's how we have a yacht.
Well, we actually have the final meeting for Florida Fish and Game on I think
Bears.
August, on black bear season again. So we had don't know if you're familiar with this at all, but we had a black bear season. It was several years ago now,
like 10 years ago.
That it got opened. It opened up. They said, okay, we're going to put a quote out of, I don't know, call it 300 bears, right? And we're going to leave the season open for 6 weeks. And once we hit that number, we're shutting it down. Well, at the end of Saturday on opening day, they had already surpassed the number of bear they wanted to take, and they shut it down instantly. So to me, that means there's a whole hell of a lot more bear than they gave credit to. But for nearly 10 years now, we've had no bear hunting. Well, it's on the ballot. It's not a ballot. This is an FWC thing with actual scientists. It made it through the first stage of. So right now it was a yes. There's one final meeting to determine whether or not we get it. All of the hunters were hopeful for it, but that's another thing. When I see these people at these meetings and attending these workshops, like they're just, oh no, these bears are good and we love bears and you're killing cubs and you're orphaning cubs and you're doing this or that and there's not that many of them. Well, if they're going to open a season, I would listen to the guys and gals that are out there in the field that actually study this. And if nothing else, what we should have learned from 10 years ago is the numbers that we thought there were in Florida, they were very undervalued. There's a whole lot more bear than we gave credit for. And that's the kind of shit, though, that happens, right? We knee-jerk reaction, right? Oh, my God, we shot too many to close it for 10 years. Done. Well, maybe that wasn't such, and now we're finding out maybe that wasn't such a good idea.
Yeah.
Like now there's bears everywhere. Jenny, for my girlfriend, she is a police officer and she works, for the reservations. And on the reservation, especially in LaBelle and Immokalee, they get 4 or 5 bear calls every couple of days. Like, hey, there's a black bear in the backyard. So they've got like rubber bullets, right, that they go out. And if the bear won't leave, they'll put their lights and sirens on first and try to chase it off. And if not, if they have to escalate it, they try to shoot it with a rubber bullet. But I mean, they're everywhere. Like she'll say if she's doing a night shift and on night shift, it's not unusual for her to see 10, 12 bear a night. This is in South Florida. That's not where you would think there would be bears. Yeah. They're everywhere.
Yeah, they've kind of, in a lot of places, they've kind of become big raccoons. And that can be a problem for them, when it's like they just get overpopulated for a certain area, they're relying on garbage, they're having more human interaction. And I love bears. They're one of my favorite animals. I was like, I'm going to be a bear biologist. And Again, I wish the Fish and Wildlife Services would do a little bit more education around hunting's connection to wildlife conservation in America, because I mean, they have enough to do, right? It really shouldn't be their job to educate everybody, but at this point it might have to be, because if you only have hunters being like, no, it's good, we want to be, it's like, okay, but where's the full story on that? And then you've got Fish and Wildlife saying, well, there's a lot of bears, so we want to hunt them. Is that like the end of the story that they're giving the public? I really wish there were more opportunities for like a full education on how wildlife. Oh, you're really interested in wildlife management all of a sudden because you're speaking up in our meetings. Great, let's do some more education. But that's wishful thinking on my part. They have enough going on, but I really do think that.
Well, and what I'm seeing in these workshops, right, the FWC workshops, look at the people that are there that are anti-bear season. They're from Miami, Orlando, Tampa, huge metro areas where there are no bears, right? They've never seen a human bear conflict. But they feel, for whatever reason, oh, I don't want to kill Yogi Bear. We can't have that. So by God, we don't need a bear season in Florida. Well, shit. What makes you the authority all of a sudden on a bear? You live in the middle of a city surrounded by SeaWorld, Disneyland, Universal, and all that other shit. If you want to see a bear, go to one of those parks and ride the ride.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, there's also, it's like, we have to be careful that we're not, and I don't think we are, but like, villainizing animals, like, oh, we gotta kill them because they're messing up people's garbage or whatever. And it's like, it's not about that. It's not about the conflict is a symptom of something that has gone wrong in terms of your carrying capacity and the land that you have available, the land and food sources that you have available for that animal. Human wildlife conflict is just a symptom of that. And here's one way, and then you can get into it there. But I feel like that happens so much. That happened a lot with well-meaning people in Colorado when the cougar situation was going on. And so much of it was about villainizing the cougars. And it's like, cougars are just being cougars, I don't hold it against any animal if they take a chomp out of someone. We're not holding them to that level of like, now we told you don't chomp on people. But there has to be an understanding that that is a symptom of something gone wrong in not even necessarily management, just like carrying capacity of the animals, but carrying capacity of the people too. Like, we're just spreading out too much into their, like, yeah, you are in their house. And depending on how many animals we've got and how many people we've got and what that crossover is, but just being really careful that we're not saying like they're the bad guys for doing this and we have to kill them because they're dangerous or something, or that's the sole reason that hunting takes place as a form of management.
Yeah, and I think maybe, while you were saying that, I'm thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, I wonder if that's happened with the wolf thing in Colorado. I wonder if that's part of that driving factor there, that, they've been villainized with cattle depredation and everything else, and that's why, you get that strong opinion. You get it both sides, right? You get the very strong opinion from the left and you get it from the right, and it seems like there's kind of very little middle ground anyway associated with that. But then, when some asshole tourist goes to Yellowstone and goes out and tries to play nice with a grizzly bear and gets his ass eaten up, you don't hear about everybody losing their shit over that, though, right?
Yep.
It's a weird kind of like, I don't know. I like alligators. I like seeing them. I think they're cool on there. Do I want to be in the water with them? Absolutely not. They're a monster. They're gonna eat me. But I don't blame the alligator for doing alligator things. That's just what alligators do.
Right.
Alligators, unbelievable conservation success story. The most incredible. Like, they're
correct.
awesome.
Yeah.
But all right, well, shit. See, we go down these rabbit holes again. So
Now we're
real
on
quick,
alligators.
let's move on. Yeah, we're on. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to have Brant back on the show because we have barely scratched the surface of what we could get into. All right, let's kind of go more of a little bit rapid fire style here right now. So, let's talk about the book a little bit, and I'm gonna go more to the controversial side. What kind of backlash have you received since you published?
Very little, genuinely. I would say the biggest backlash that I got was as the book was coming out, and that is, don't tell anyone, but booksellers judge your book by its cover. And not so much the cover art, but they will judge it by the title. A lot of these booksellers, they just get kind of a list of books that are coming out. Sort of like a movie theater would hear about a movie coming out and decide whether or not they're going to play it before they know if it's good or not. So booksellers have to do the same thing, where here's the books that are coming out in horror, nature, romance, or whatever. And they have to decide, like, what are we going to get? They don't know. They haven't read it. They don't know. But they'll look, and my book is titled Shotgun. There's shotgun in the world, in the word. The subtitle is Why Environmentalists Should Love Hunting. And it's like right there. It's like, I bet that subtitle just pissed people off. The cover is adorable. I love my cover. It's beautiful. It's very welcoming and friendly.
It looks terrifying.
What was terrifying was that silhouette of the shotgun that the first artist sent back to me, and I was like, you didn't even Google a shotgun. I took a picture of a Purdy online, and I was like, just follow this outline. So it was hard for me to get into bookstores. That was really the biggest hurdle that I had to overcome, was putting it on the shelf. I'm in New York. There's a bunch of great bookstores here, and it was near impossible to get on any shelves. So that was the biggest hurdle that I encountered. The response to the book has been overwhelmingly positive. And the lectures I give, same thing. Yes, there's a self-selecting group of people who come to the lectures. I'd say the closest I've ever come to trouble was I give a lecture on the early history of conservation in America, and a lot of that is tied up in hunting. And so a lot of people, they come to that lecture and they're very surprised that I'm talking about hunting so much in this lecture about conservation, because they had no idea it was so interconnected. And it's kind of hard for me to talk about the history without talking about it. So at the end of one of those lectures, I had a woman who had some real spicy questions, or rather, her attitude was very spicy. Her questions were totally run-of-the-mill. I actually answer them all in my book. I answer them in my other lectures, but didn't have that. It wasn't the right place to get to all those questions in that lecture. So that was, at the same time, I was happy that she was asking me those questions because I really wanted to answer them, but I didn't really have the time or the space at that particular lecture series to get into it too much, and they were a little nervous about moving things along and wanting me to make sure I got to all the questions. So it was like, I had to answer some other people's questions, and then I wanted to come back to her, but I didn't have time to finish everything. So I regret that a little bit. But she just she had these questions that are very normal, well, what's your definition of conservation then? And why were these bird hats, these hats with the feathers and birds on them, why were those so frivolous, but fur isn't? And why? And I was like, oh man, I have an amazing answer for every single one of these questions. So that, none of that bothered me, but she was very spicy with her attitude about it, and would continue to interrupt me while I was answering the questions. And it was like, oh, I'm so desperate to answer your questions. Thank you for asking them. Please let me answer them. But it was really hard to talk with her. So I'm a little bummed about that. I really wish I'd had more of a chance to talk with her and answer her questions. That's about the spiciest thing I've had to deal with. But no, people are, and I think a lot of it, going back to what we started talking about at the very beginning, a lot of that has to do with I came from studying wildlife conservation. I came from being a non-hunter, being skeptical of hunting, not liking hunting. I came from these places that people can sort of let their guard down around and let themselves listen to me. I live in New York City, so I'm not, I'm not like a big, scary Texas guy with a hat, like yelling about, like different. So people are giving me more leeway to be like, okay, this guy's he's nice, he's hopefully a little funny, and I try to be open enough about my experience that they feel comfortable talking about their experience and having their questions. So in general, people are very generous with me and truly come from a place of curiosity, not angst or wanting to have a fight. They're truly really really curious, and I try to get that across to everybody too. It's tough for us to not have our hackles up when we think of anti-hunting, but what we have to remember is that most people are not anti-hunting. Most people are non-hunters, and we just have to take our time and talk to them genuinely, because they're, for the most part, they're really curious. I see that all the time with again, I'm in New York City. We have more people come to us for our introductory hunting classes than we even have mentors assembled to take them out and teach. We have to turn people away. So people are curious. It's just finding the time and place to be able to talk to them.
That was a great response, by the way.
Cool. Yeah.
That was perfect. So I'm going to ask you another question. Same question I asked Sue when she was on the show. So, since the book release and even prior to leading up to it, have you been successful in changing minds in general, do you think?
I think so. With people who I know I have changed the minds of people who I personally know. And they're very clear and able to say, wow, you have changed my mind. I just didn't know much about this, and I had kind of icky feelings about it, but that's interesting, and they'll ask me a lot of questions. So for sure, I know the people who I'm closest to, that they've been able to listen to me and excited about listening and have had their minds changed. And then when I do things that are like book talks and lectures, if I'm doing part of my lecture series, absolutely, I have people who come up to me afterwards, and they don't have to. No one's making them do that. They come up to me very specifically to say, that was really interesting. I didn't know any of that stuff. It really changed my mind about a lot of things. I just had no idea. And again, why would they? Why would you understand any of this like really deep dive hunting stuff if you don't hunt? And the only thing you've ever seen is some media post of someone who's really happy that they just killed an animal. Like, that is weird. If that's all of your understanding of what hunting is just what appears to be someone psyched that they just killed an animal, like, yeah, I'm glad people have that response in a way. You know what I mean? So yep. It's just, again, finding the opportunity to talk to people. But yes, they absolutely. And another thing about the being in the city that people kind of don't give it credit for is that, especially the people in New York, a lot of them, especially the people who are primed to come to a 1 hour lecture on like the history of conservation and conservation economics in America, and like the people who are primed to like do that on their day off, like drink a glass of wine and listen to conservation economics, those are already the people who are going to the farmer's market and are like, well, I would like some, you're telling me this is a regenerative farm that's up the Hudson and they only do that. Like, they don't quite realize the connection, but they're so close.
The door's open.
Yeah, they're right there. So they're already kind of primed without realizing it.
That was also very good. Great answer again. All right. So I've got two more for you, and then we'll wrap it up because we have gone, we just go down rabbit holes. We're definitely
I can talk forever. That is not my. Yeah.
Well, and that's us too. I mean, we're so passionate about it. I can sit here and and that's the thing. There's some guests that we have on where it sometimes it's a little dry and we never kind of hit it off, or not necessarily hit it off, but it's just, it's a back and forth and all right, you're there for 30 minutes and all right, that's enough kind of thing. And there's other guests that we feel like instantly, like, so you and I have never met, right? We've never talked aside from email. And I feel like, I've met somebody that I could be friends with right now. And we could have these I could sit down at a bar and have a beer with this guy and we could talk for hours until they kicked us out of the bar kind of thing. That's the kind of people. And we really enjoy having guests like that. And you're obviously one of them too. I mean, you and you have a different way of looking at it too, which I really appreciate too. Coming from me, I grew up in a hunting family and I know nothing other than hunting. So I don't have that other perspective. I just don't understand it. So for me, when I'm having these conversations, you're definitely going to be way better at than I am because you can see it from both sides. I can't. I've only ever seen it one way, and I don't understand when people. And I think even I get into these social media spats with people sometimes, and I have to remember back it down a little bit because these people they didn't grow up with it like I did. They don't understand, and I don't know how to explain it to them because that's the only thing I know. I've not had it the other way.
Send them a link to buy my book.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. So what is, and I think I was scrolling through and this is just one of the things I wanted to ask real quick. So in your opinion, should hunters get louder or just smarter?
Oh man. I mean, I'm a belt and suspenders guy. I think right now we got to be doing both and a lot of it. I've been actually really just excited and proud of the hunting community when it comes to getting together on issues like Colorado cougar or the recent proposal to sell public lands, and really just fighting together and saying look, hey, it doesn't matter who you voted for or what you agree with and don't agree with. This public land thing, this is a separate issue, and we're
there are no party lines when it comes to that stuff.
No party lines when we're all on the same side for that one. And so I loved that sort of kumbaya moment of hunters and different types of hunters and non-hunters and anti-hunters all of a sudden being like, hell no, not 1 acre. I loved that. That really gave me the warm and fuzzies. But yeah, just how the hunting community is kind of all keyed into similar newsletters and podcasts and what's going on with Howl, what's going on with Blood Origins, what are you guys talking about, what are everyone's kind of keyed into the scene and staying abreast of what's happening out there. How do we get involved? How do we fight for each other and for this lifestyle that we all rely on and love? And so I've been really proud of the hunting community in the last couple of years and how we've gotten better at, hey, there is there's a public meeting. We need people to show up online in person, and people do. And so what I worry is this fight's just going to be endless. And I worry about people getting burnt out on it. But I hope, because of all the successes that we've seen and sort of the headway that I think we're making, I hope it just keeps people energized into staying with it and okay, what's the next? What's next? So I think to answer your question, I think it's both. Definitely.
Yeah, and I'll go back to the statement you made. I agree with you. I think it's never ending. I don't know. I can't see a light at the end of the tunnel with this. I think it's just something that you've got to be prepared for. And if you want to continue to be able to hunt, to fish, to enjoy public land, to enjoy the outdoors and have the right to do so, I think you just need to be prepared to fight for it.
Until you get conservation history and wildlife management into every school as its own class, like America's conservation history and how conservation works in America, until that is a class in school that sets the record straight for everyone from a young age, And later on, they know what to look back at or how to look into something that they're interested in or have feelings about. Until you make it a more common thing that people just know about, then yeah, it's going to be up to us to do that individual education over and over and over and over again.
I never thought about that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I always say like it's like hunting and fishing is like the one hobby that you have to like justify, kind of thing. Like you have to like fight for it. Like there's no other there's no like protest. Like, oh, like we're protesting the pickleball league, you know, at this community on there. But like, oh, we want to start up a season for black bear, and this is the science behind it.
Right.
Now there's multiple meetings I have to go against and stuff
But
like
from
that.
an education perspective, I can see where if this is part of regular curriculum, because it's codified, we're not making it up. This codified. Here's the science. That's I never thought about it that way.
I don't care. My goal is not to make more hunters. I don't care if people become hunters or not. I'm thrilled when people are excited and curious enough that they want to come to our intro hunting programs. And we're very upfront about like, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of money, but helping people go on that journey themselves. So I'm psyched when we get more hunters in the woods, mostly because that means we are creating more hunting advocates. But truly, yeah, it is about an understanding of wildlife conservation, conservation history, and what wildlife management means. People do not know it's a thing, and it is a part of the country that you live in. And if you like animals, shouldn't you know something about it? So it's not about making more hunters. It is just like, here's how these systems work, and they work really well. America has its own way of doing it, and believe it or not, it's the best in the world. Here's why, here's how this is. But it's basically just a science class. It is wildlife conservation and wildlife ecology and management. And yeah, that's it. There just needs to be more education around it.
And I think, one of the points to be taken from this is you don't have to be a hunter to participate in conservation. You don't. It's not just hunters. Anybody can participate, and they can help, and they can do their part, not just hunters. That's the takeaway that I get from that.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. It's like, I don't think people like understand. I'm just like everybody loves bison. I'm just like, but no one understands. It's like, they were down to like 100 bison in like Mexico, and that's where like historically where all the bison come from that we have now. Like one herd that like survived being killed off on there, or like, oh, you like I said, like elk, you like wild turkey, like you like seeing wild turkey. Like wild turkey wasn't a thing in like the Carolinas until like the 90s, and now there's there's a reason why these animals are here, and it's because of hunters.
Yep.
That's great. All right, so let's wrap this up. I'm going to give you one last one, Brant, and then we'll get out of here for the day. But so what's the one uncomfortable truth that no one wants to say, but you will? Hot seat time.
Oh, man. I will, any chance I get, I will talk about Africa, and it happens in Tajikistan, Mongolia, wherever, but people are more familiar with Africa. I will take the opportunity to talk about sport and trophy, and how trophy was a good word. It originated as a good thing. Sport hunting was a good word. It originated from a good thing. Sport and trophy are things we want. Hunting is not sport like soccer. Hunting is sport like sporting. Like the animal has a sporting fair chance at evading you, another predator. That is something that animals did not have under market hunting, which was how we lost the passenger pigeon, which was how we almost lost the bison, turkey, you name it. That dip in our wildlife populations, that was because of market hunting. And in response to that, we got the sport hunter who said, those animals need to fairly be able to evade me. They can't evade a duck hunter with a punt gun. They can't evade someone with a tiny cannon, but they could evade me. The trophy hunter is someone who, again, unlike the market hunter, the trophy hunter is being selective. No, they're not going to shoot that one because it's a female. No, they're not going to shoot that one because it's too young. We want that animal to grow up, get big and strong, pass along its genes, because genetic variety is what's important. And so the origins of trophy, the origins of sport, these terms that are, and I don't even like to use the word controversial, because for me, again, settled science isn't controversial. The existence of flat earthers does not make the earth being round controversial. You wouldn't say, well, it's controversial. We don't know what, some people think it's flat, some people think it's square. It's controversial. It's not controversial. So I'm careful even when I use controversial. You can be pissed off about hunting. You can think that big game hunting, trophy hunting, hunting in Africa, hunting in places other than America or America, you can think they're terrible, but they're not, because we have the science to prove that they're not. That even if you don't like it and you don't like the people who do it, we have all of this history and data that shows that it's working. So you can either care and you can either want the answer that you want, or you can want the answer that works. I want the answer that works. Maybe there's types of hunting and trapping that I don't like. I don't care. Me liking it or not liking it is not the point. Does it work? Because at the end of the day, what I want is as much habitat as humanly possible and as many animals as can healthily, sustainably fit there as possible. So for me, it is habitat and animals. And I want to get there in whatever the most successful way is, not the way I would particularly want it to be. I can't make it out of puppy kisses and rainbow farts. What is real? What is working? It's a long answer. I don't know if it was as spicy as you wanted, but I will talk about those mechanics all day long because they're not controversial. They are real science. And that's what I want to get across to people.
That's all. Man, that's great.
You're way smarter than us.
Oh yeah. You can always tell when you're outclassed instantly.
Touche. I would have said that exactly the same way.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what the Scrippy thing said for me to say too.
Well, you guys have a published author, words. And...
All right.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I felt a little bit like that. So we had Robbie on the Robbie Kroger on the podcast, and Robbie's a super nice guy, but he does go down some rabbit holes like that, and he forgets not all of us are fucking doctors, right? We're just some random guys that love to hunt and fish, and we want to encourage people to get out there and do it. But some of that shit goes over your head, so you got to be careful too.
Yeah, this podcast happened over drinks. At a house.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Brant, but man, that was fantastic. And listen, the Africa thing, we could do an entire podcast just on the Africa thing alone.
Africa.
Oh, and matter of fact, let's do that. Let's set that up and let's just do a podcast. We'll just tailor it around Africa and we'll go down that rabbit hole.
Let's do it in Africa? Are you taking me?
Listen, well, we go all the time, right? I'm there a couple times a year, and like if I could only hunt one place for the rest of my life, it would be Africa. And it's just, have you been?
Not yet. I was supposed to go this summer, and then I got a very cool opportunity to go to Mongolia and study snow leopards.
Oh.
So I'm doing that, and then hopefully next summer.
Oh, that's sick.
That's okay. I guess that's acceptable.
Damn.
Yeah, we'll let you off that one.
This guy's one-upping us with his snow leopard.
Well, guys, everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. This has been fantastic, Brant. Thanks a bunch. We're gonna link all your socials down below, the details, and for those of you out there, I started reading it, but I'm reading like 5 books at the same time, so I've not got through it. Jenny's read it. I think Paul's read it. everybody that's read it that I know absolutely loves it. And like I said, because of my girlfriend is why we're actually here, because she found you and she's like, will you please tell him I said hi and I really love what he's doing? I'm like, okay, so Jenny, I just did that. So I told Brent hi for you. But guys, listen, you really need to go out there. I'll put a link down in the description to be able to purchase the book. It is the Shotgun Conservationist, author Brandt McDuff. Thanks a bunch for taking the time out to, speak with us today and enlighten us a little bit. We're definitely going to do it again. And then, folks, until next time, live free, hunt hard, and keep chasing the adventure.